Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of topic 4. Alright, so let's continue. Namun, berlaku perubahan transformasi hubungan etnik setelah Inggeris menguasai negeri-negeri Selat dan mula melebarkan pengaruh mereka dengan campur tangan di negeri-negeri Melayu. Hal ini ditambah lagi dengan berlakunya revolusi perindustrian di Barat, maka bertambahnya kegiatan melumbung biji timah di Perak dan Selangor. Sikap British yang berorientasikan keuntungan dan untuk mengeksploitasi hasil bumi di tanah Melayu juga mendorong kepada dasar campur tangan. Keadaan ini menyebabkan British membawa masuk imigran dari China yang akhirnya membentuk sebuah masyarakat berbilang kaum serta menimbulkan masalah seperti pergaduhan kongsi gelap. Pada masa yang sama, berlakunya pembukaan ladang-ladang getah yang menyebabkan British membawa masuk imigran dari India secara beramai-ramai. Now, this means there was a transformation in ethnic relation after the British took control of the negeri-negeri Selat and began expanding their influences by intervening in the negeri-negeri Melayu Malay states. This situation was further intensified by the revolusi perindustrian di Barat. Okay, the Industrial Revolution in the West, which increased tin mining activities in Perak and Selangor. The British, who were profit oriented and aimed to exploit the natural resources of Malaya, were motivated to intervene more deeply. As a result, they brought in immigrants from China, which eventually created a multi ethnic society and led to problems such as secret society conflicts. Okay. At the same time, the opening of rubber plantation led the British to bring in large number of immigrants from India. Okay, now let's go to the next part. Kedatangan orang Cina mencetuskan persaingan dalam kalangan anak Raja Melayu dengan para pembesar untuk menguasai hak pentadbiran satu-satu kawasan bagi menambah pendapatan mereka menerusi pemberian konsesi kepada saudagar Cina. Beberapa pakatan dibuat antara kelompok Melayu dengan kelompok Cina dan pergaduhan sengit berlaku antara mereka mengakibatkan perdagangan biji timah terganggu oleh pergaduhan yang berpanjangan. Keadaan ini menyebabkan British menjalankan dasar campur tangan khususnya di Perak yang merupakan pengeluar biji timah yang utama di tanah Melayu. Now, this passage actually means that the arrival of the Chinese led to competition among Malay royalty and local chiefs to gain control over the administration, pentadbiran of certain areas, as they could increase their income by granting concession to Chinese traders. Several alliances were formed between Malay groups and Chinese groups, and intense conflict broke out between them. These prolonged fights disrupted the tin trade. So as a result, what happened? The British implemented Dasar Campur Tangan, a policy of intervention, especially in Perak, which was the main producer of tin in Malaya. Now, you have to understand two important terms here. One is pentadbiran, administration, and second is konsesi, concession. Only then you will be able to understand what I'm trying to say here. So let's understand the word pentadbiran first. This means having control or authority over a place. That is administration. Malay rulers and chiefs wanted to control certain areas, right? So if they control the area, they could make decision, they could collect taxes and manage resources there. So you have to understand that to control administration, to control pentadbiran means to be in charge of that area. Okay? Let's look at the word concession. It means permission or rights given to someone to use land or resources for business. Okay, so Malay rulers or chiefs they gave Chinese traders permission to mine tin and use the land. So what happens in return is that the rulers would earn money through fees, taxes, and profit sharing. Okay, so a concession is actually a business deal, right? Where someone is allowed to use the land or resources to make money. Can I? So let me connect now pentadbiran and konsesi that we are seeing in this paragraph. It means that Malay rulers and the chiefs, they were competing to control areas because if they were in charge, if they were in the pentadbiran, they could give concession to Chinese miners. So what happens to them? They will be able to earn more money from those deals. Can, huh? So because this fight was prolonging for a very long time, what happened? British had to implement a policy called Dasar Campur Tangan, and it started off at Perak. Okay, so now let's look here. Perjanjian Pangkor 1874 memperuntukkan pelantikan seorang residen British yang akan dirujuk dalam semua perkara kecuali yang berkaitan dengan agama dan adat resat orang Melayu. Sistem residen seterusnya telah diperkenalkan di Selangor, Pahang dan Negeri Sembilan. So, Perjanjian Pangkor 1874, okay, stated that a British resident would be appointed. This resident had to be consulted on all matters of administration pentadbiran except for those that are related to Malay religion and customs. Agama dan adat resat orang Melayu. Okay. After that, resident system was also introduced in Selangor, Pahang and Negeri Sembilan. Okay. Now let me simplify this for you. Resident British, it means a British advisor. Okay, but you have to remember this resident is actually a very powerful person. Okay, now Malay rulers were still able to rule, but they had to follow the residents' advice in most matters. Only religion and Malay custom remain under their full control, under the Malay rulers' control. So, in reality, this meant that the British had strong control over the government. Alright, so now let's look here. Dengan campur tangan British ini mewujudkan tiga bentuk pentadbiran di tanah Melayu, iaitu bentuk pentadbiran negeri-negeri selat, negeri-negeri Melayu bersekutu, negeri-negeri Melayu tidak bersekutu. Okay. Negeri-negeri selat ditadbir secara langsung oleh British, which means that the British had full control. Okay. Negeri-negeri Melayu bersekutu, pentadbiran di bawah kuasa Raja-Raja Melayu tetapi hakikatnya ditadbir oleh British dan mengutamakan kepentingan kapitalis Inggeris. Now this means that it is officially ruled by Malay sultans, but in reality, British controlled the pentadbiran. Policies mainly served the British economic interests. Alright, so technically Malay rulers were still there, but British had the real power. Alright. Negeri-negeri Melayu tidak bersekutu. In other words, NNMTB. So make sure to have short forms, okay? NNS, NNMB, NNMTB. That way it will be easier for you to remember, okay? So NNMTB ditadbir secara langsung untuk kepentingan orang Melayu tetapi urusan pentadbiran dipegang oleh pegawai British. NNMTB was said to be ruled for the benefit of the Malays, but administrative matters were still handled by the British officers. So what does this mean? These states had more freedom, but the British still had influence. Alright? So let me give you a very simple summary. For the first one, NNS, full British rule. NNMB, indirect rule, but British were still dominant. NNMTB still had some independence but still influenced by British.
Okay, let's continue. Perkauman di Malaysia bermula semasa pentadbiran British pada akhir abad ke-19. Berbeza dengan masyarakat majmuk zaman Kesultanan Melayu Melaka yang terbentuk secara semula jadi. Sebelum kedatangan British, pendatang datang secara sukarela bersama keluarga, menjalin hubungan mesra dengan penduduk tempatan dan wujud akomodasi budaya seperti perkahwinan antara Cina dan orang tempatan, contoh masyarakat Babak, serta pengalaman budaya Melayu dalam kehidupan seharian. Selain itu, amalan dan adat resam dibawa masuk oleh mereka juga diterima pakai oleh penduduk tempatan. Adat bersanding, bunga manggar, bunga telur dalam majlis perkahwinan ialah asimilasi penduduk tempatan dengan pendatang ataupun pedagang dari India. Alright, so what this passage means that racism in Malaysia began during British administration in the late 19th century. So it only started during pentadbiran British, which was different from the plural society, masyarakat majmuk of KMM, Kesultanan Melayu Melaka era, that developed naturally. So you can imagine, during British time, racism started, but before that, it all happened it all happened secara semula jadi naturally. Before the arrival of the British, migrants came voluntarily with their families, built friendly relationship with the local people, and cultural accommodation took place. Accommodasi took place. So let's see some examples that they have given. There were intermarriages between the Chinese and the locals. That is why we have the Baba community and the adoption of Malay culture in daily life. Okay. In addition, the practices and custom brought by these migrants were also accepted by the local population. Okay. Wedding traditions such as the uh, bersanding, bunga manggar, bunga telur are examples of cultural assimilation. Okay, assimilasi, between the local people and also the migrants. Namun, pola pembentukan masyarakat majmuk selepas kedatangan penjajah British berbeza dengan zaman sebelum kedatangan mereka. Contohnya, penghijrahan masuk orang Cina dan India ke tanah Melayu digalakkan oleh British untuk memajukan kepentingan ekonomi dan politik mereka. Situasi ini menyebabkan interaksi dan pengaruh budaya antara masyarakat Cina dengan masyarakat Melayu terdapat jurang pemisah yang luas. Perkara ini disebabkan oleh kawasan penempatan yang berasingan, iaitu orang Cina tertumpu di kawasan bandar, terutamanya di kawasan perlombongan. Polisi pentadbiran Inggeris juga secara sengaja memisahkan penempatan antara kaum ini melalui dasar, pecah dan perintah. Alright, let me explain this passage now. However, the pattern of forming a masyarakat majmuk after the arrival of the British colonizers was different from the period before their arrival. Okay, now, so there's a before and after story. Okay, for example, the migration of Chinese and Indian communities into Malaya, into Tanah Melayu, was encouraged by the British to advance their economic and political interests. Okay, so what happened because of this? This situation led to a wide gap interaction and cultural influences between the Chinese and Malay communities. This was due to segregated settlements, which we have learnt before, right? Where the Chinese were concentrated in urban areas, especially in kawasan perlombongan. So, British administrative policies also deliberately separated ethnic groups through dasar, pecah dan perintah, divide and rule strategy. Okay. Pengaruh bahasa antara Cina dan Melayu wujud tetapi sangat terhad kerana dasar British yang sengaja melambatkan perpaduan sosial dan politik antara kaum. British mengawal kuasa politik orang Melayu walaupun sistem beraja masih dikekalkan secara nominal. So it means that the influence of language between the Chinese and Malays existed but was very limited. Why? This is because British policies that deliberately slowed down social and political unity among the races. Okay, you have to remember the British controlled the political power of the Malays, even though the monarchy system was nominally maintained. There was still system beraja, but still the British controlled. Alright. Mereka juga mengklasifikasikan masyarakat berdasarkan konsep ras yang sempit dan bersifat rasis serta melaksanakan dasar pecah dan perintah. Dasar ini menyebabkan hubungan etnik berubah dan pembahagian pekerjaan berlaku mengikut kaum. So this means that they also classified society based on a narrow and racial concept of race. And they also implemented a divide and rule policy. Can you see how British did not want all of us to be united? They will keep on segregating us. They will keep on separating us. So, pemerintahan British bertujuan menguntungkan mereka sahaja, menyebabkan orang Melayu mengalami kemiskinan, kemunduran dan peminggiran. Okay, so British, right, when they rule, they mainly benefited themselves, resulting in what? These 3 points here: poverty, underdevelopment, and marginalization among the Malays. Okay, kebimbangan terhadap kehilangan identiti dan kuasa politik mendorong kebangkitan nasionalisme Melayu. Isu bahasa, pendidikan, kedudukan raja dan hak tanah menjadi fokus utama dalam penentangan terhadap Malayan Union selepas Perang Dunia Kedua. So now you can understand what actually instilled them to fight for their rights. Okay? Concerns over the loss of identity and political power sparked the rise of Malay nationalism. So, issues such as language, education, position of the rulers, and land rights became their main focus in opposing the Malayan Union after the World War II. Okay? Next, konsep etnik payung semakin terpinggir apabila setiap kaum menuntut kerakyatan tetapi masih mahu hidup berasingan dari segi bahasa, budaya, agama dan ekonomi. Dalam masa yang sama, British enggan memberi kemerdekaan kepada gerakan berideologi sosialis, komunis atau Islam. So you have to understand that the idea of people in Malaysia being united as one group became weaker. Okay, so even though different races like Malays, Chinese, Indian all wanted citizenship, they still prefer to live separately with their own language, culture, religion, their own economic activities. So they were living in the same country but not really mixing much. Understand, huh? At the same time, the British also did not want to give independence to groups that followed socialist ideas, communist ideas, and Islamic political movements. So, in simple, people wanted to be citizen but stayed divided, and the British only supported certain groups while blocking others from gaining independence. Can, ah? Alright, moving on. UMNO yang menyokong sistem sedia ada seperti monarki dan ekonomi kapitalis memilih untuk bekerjasama dengan British. Pada masa sama, UMNO turut bekerjasama dengan kaum Cina dan India melalui MCA dan MIC yang membawa kepada pembentukan Parti Perikatan dan seterusnya Barisan Nasional. Selepas 10 tahun merdeka, pembangunan berasaskan ekonomi bebas lebih menguntungkan pelabur asing dan tidak seimbang, tertumpu di bandar. Masyarakat Melayu merasakan kemerdekaan belum meningkatkan taraf hidup mereka, lalu menuntut pengiktirafan bahasa, budaya dan agama serta peluang ekonomi yang lebih adil tanpa dipinggirkan oleh penguasaan kaum lain. Alright, so what it means here is that UMNO supported the existing system. So they choose to work together with the British instead of opposing them. Okay. At the same time, UMNO also cooperated with the Chinese and Indian communities through MCA and MIC. Okay. This cooperation led to formation of Parti Perikatan, which later on became Barisan Nasional. Cool. After independence, about 10 years later, the economy followed a capitalist system, a free market system, which mainly benefited foreign investors and city areas, urban areas. All right. Now, because of this, many Malays felt their lives did not improve much. They felt like they were left behind compared to other groups. So, what they did, they began to demand for stronger recognition of Malay language, Malay culture, and also Islam, fairer economic opportunities without being dominated by other communities. So, what it meant in short is that UMNO worked with the British and other races to gain independence, but after independence, economic benefits were uneven, causing the dissatisfaction among Malays. Okay? Alright, we are almost going to end this topic already ya. Selepas pelaksanaan DEB, jurang pendapatan etnik dikurangkan, kemiskinan menurun dan kelas menengah berkembang, mengubah struktur masyarakat. Perkiraan etnik menjadi sekunder berbanding ganjaran material status sosial dan ikatan sosial, walaupun keutamaan berbeza mengikut wilayah. Barat Semenanjung fokus peribadi, utara atau timur Semenanjung lebih kepada agama, manakala Sabah dan Sarawak menekankan kewilayahan. Kestabilan politik melalui perkongsian kuasa menarik pelaburan asing, membuka peluang pekerjaan dan memupuk budaya komersial serta hubungan silang budaya antara etnik. Now, after DEB was introduced, what happened? Income gaps between ethnic groups became smaller now. Because earlier there was a problem, right? So DEB was introduced. And what happened? Income gaps between ethnic groups became smaller, poverty decreased, a middle class started to grow, society became more modern and balanced. Can you see how the issue earlier was addressed? So, because of this, people began to care less about ethnicity and more about money, social status, personal relationship. Okay. However, priorities were different depending on region. Okay. Now, here's where you're going to see these 3 points. Barat Semenanjung focused on economic, more individual and economic focus. Alright? Utara Timur Semenanjung lebih kepada agama, which means that they were more focused on religion. Sabah and Sarawak were more focused on regional identity, kewilayahan, regional identity. Ya? At the same time, political stability helped. What is political stability? You have to understand. Different races sharing power. Political stability helped. Attracting foreign investment, created jobs, growing business and trades. So this also encouraged more interaction between different ethnic group, a better cultural relationship. Okay? Now, you have to understand the main point of this paragraph is that the DEB improved the economy and reduced inequality, making people to focus less on race and more on economic success and social life, while also strengthening unity through stability and development. Pada 90-90-an, batas etnik semakin nipis dan tindakan individu lebih dipandu oleh pertimbangan bukan etnik. Walaupun terdapat konflik negara tetap stabil, makmur dan ekonomi berkembang. Perkongsian bijak antara elit ekonomi pelbagai kaum menyokong pertumbuhan sektor swasta, manakala kestabilan politik membolehkan rakyat berkongsi kuasa. Hasilnya, wujud budaya keterbukaan dan hubungan silang budaya antara masyarakat pelbagai etnik, bahasa dan agama. Now, generally what they're trying to say is that by the 1990s, race mattered less, cooperation increased, and Malaysia became more stable, open, and economically successful. Okay? Let's go to the next paragraph. Selepas DEB, hubungan etnik di Malaysia lebih dipengaruhi oleh batas etnik yang nipis dan interaksi berdasarkan pertimbangan bukan etnik. Konflik kini berpunca daripada kemiskinan, pengangguran, peminggiran dan ketidaksamarataan, terutama di kalangan masyarakat bandar miskin. Bukannya perbezaan etnik semata-mata. Contoh seperti Kampung Rawa dan Kampung Medan menunjukkan pengurusan kumpulan miskin perlu diberi perhatian. Perbezaan etnik bukan punca konflik tetapi kegagalan institusi kerajaan menangani kemunduran dan ketidaksamarataan yang menyebabkan manipulasi etnik. So the key idea here is that ethnic differences are not the main cause of conflict, alright? The real issue is that when the government or institution fail to handle kemiskinan, poverty and inequality properly, that's when people use race as an excuse or tool to express frustration. So, modern conflicts in Malaysia are more about economic and social problems, not race itself. Remember that. But race can still be used when those problems are not solved. Okay? Alright, so with that, we have completed this topic and we're going to be moving on to the next one, which is the final topic for topic 4, alat penyatu paduan, tawar-menawar, perundingan dan pengantaraan. Alright, so first, as usual, try to understand the title. Alat penyatu paduan means tools of integration. Tawar-menawar means bargaining, negotiation. Perundingan, which means consultation. Pengantaraan means intermediation or mediation. Okay? Kesepaduan rakyat Malaysia dibina melalui prinsip tawar-menawar, perundingan dan pengantaraan. Formula BNM yang menjadi asas perlembagaan persekutuan. Proses ini menyatupadukan masyarakat sejak sebelum merdeka dan terus penting dalam menyelesaikan defisit sosial. Konsep ini juga relevan dalam menghadapi cabaran alamiah atau krisis politik di mana pemulihan perlu merangkumi aspek fizikal, mental, emosi dan sosiologi secara kolektif. Okay, so what you're trying to say is that Malaysian unity has built through negotiation, discussion, and mediation, sometimes called as the BNM formula. Understand, huh? These 3 points here is also known as BNM formula. This process has helped bring different communities together even before independence. You got to understand that this BNN formula has helped to bring different communities together even before Merdeka. It continues to be important for fixing social problems and bridging gaps between the groups. Okay, the concept is also useful during natural disasters and political crisis. Now, recovery in this situation must address people's needs collectively in multiple ways: physical, mental, emotional, and social. So, I would like to explain once again on the 3 points. Tawar menawar, which is technically negotiation, you're bargaining, right? Example, agreeing on language, religion, or political rights during the drafting of the constitution. Number two, perundingan, which means consulting. Communities and leaders talk through issues carefully before making decisions. Focuses on listening, understanding, and planning together. Okay. Point number three, pengantaraan, mediation or intermediation means a neutral party which helps resolve disputes between groups to ensure conflicts do not escalate and everyone's interests are considered. That is pengantaraan, being like a middle person. Okay, so in short, right, these tools work together to maintain unity, to solve conflict, and also to strengthen cooperation between Malaysia's diverse community. So with that, we have finally completed topic 4. All right, so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.